Okay, so this would be like the world's worst trouser joint. May's using very simple tactics, I'd say. So first thing I'm sort of thinking is, well, if you draw it out reasonably to scale, then you can extrapolate a right angle triangle and work out the angle of convergence in essence. So looking at this here, I'm going from a spread of 80mm, two separate pipes entirely, and they're going to converge down to a 45mm diameter. So evidently the half of that diameter for the smaller pipes is going to be made up of, well, it's going to be a 22.5mm diameter in essence, half of 45, so that's going to be spread out in effect. So half of the 45mm diameter in circumferential terms is 70mm, so that obviously then means that that's 70mm. So based on the 17.5mm remainder distance, this angle's 13 degrees thereabouts, so that to be perfect because the weld fixes a lot of sins. So if you've got a machine like this, then you can set it to 13 degrees and then you can take two cuts, so 76mm total length. Okay, so we're going to be taking out a proportion that looks roughly like that, and it just so happens that that welded seam conforms to the midpoint of what we want to be removing, or what we want to keep, even. Well, either way actually, because if you turn it around, it's also what you want to remove. So given that we want to take 70mm from the pipe, we can wrap it around nice and neatly with the 100mm as the starting point. We can go 35 there, mark the cut start, and then we'll go 65 on the other side, and then that's your 70mm circumferential piece that's being kept in essence. So then between these 2 points here, we then need to look at what is the midpoint of that. So it looks to me like that's 55mm. So if we go 27.5, that'll bring us to the midpoint of what's going to be removed, and then I can literally just sort of, it's more of an estimation than anything. So that's the centre line that you'd start off with, because this is drawn to scale, with that line being parallel to there. When it converges with the other pipe, it's going to be roughly 10mm up from the bottom, so roughly there. And then all you're really looking to do is to try to, from this angle, draw as straight a line as you can sort of get away with, which is just a rough guide for your grinding or whatever. And then same again for there, you sort of give it an estimation. And then if you're strong enough, which I'm not, these will cut, but they want to be sharp. So we'll use an angle grinder instead. That's it. Okay, so once you've cut it out, often you'll find that you've cut it off the wrong side of the angle. So not to worry, I can borrow it from the other side and then fill up that gap without too much difficulty. So then it's just a case of flap wheeling the joint together so it fits nicer and it brings the pipes together more at the bottom, closes up the gap at the top more as well, and then you can tack weld it, hammer it into shape, and then hopefully get yourself a nifty little trouser joint. Fair few readjustments required, but we're looking good. Well, looking questionably good. First thing is to weld into the inside of the trouser joint because you won't be able to reach it from the outside. So I've tacked it down, some tacks being better than others. When you've got handshakes, it's quite difficult to weld accurately. And of course, as you're welding along and the gap opens up like here, you want to be welding into the weld bead so that the plasma arc isn't vaporizing the surrounding metalwork. And then as you can see, you can fill that gap up without causing too much internal disturbance. I'll grind back nicely, I think. This side's obviously a lot easier because there isn't a gap, so I can just go ahead and seam that without any real problem. There we go, it's cooling down nicely. Then that's essentially the trouser joint, and then it's just a case of trying to weld around the bolt holes without putting weld beads in the way of the knot. It's only M8s on this side, so we're okay, but it's an M10 on this hole, so you have to try and rise it up the pipe more so than the flange itself. Case of letting that cool for an hour or something crazy like that, and then we'll circle this for the 45mm down pipe. And there we have it, circled that. I've hammered it in that vise until it's gone from an oval to a circle, and I would say that that's not too bad. Just needs a little bit of fettling and then it should be ready to weld. Okay, so power flow. Not exactly a high performance system, but it's straight through, so it should make a lot less back pressure. It's essentially a 3-to-1, it doesn't have the long centre branch effect of the 5-port head that this is generally connected to. That, well, I can't remember which side's which, but one of them is connected to 2 and 3, and then one's connected to 1 and 4. Whichever way, but it means that there's a long centre branch, and then one of them splits to 2 cylinders. This one, it all just feeds into one dodgy trouser joint around a bend, another crazy bend, with maybe there's a little bit of restriction there, but these engines have absolute nail heads in them, so the restrictions at the cylinder head really, rather than this dodgy bend. Yeah, straight through, glass pack, and then out the tailpipe, which I think is quite a bit of a bigger diameter. I shall check with the original system. Yeah, clearly that wasn't fitting there dead nice. So obviously the bracket with that attaches to the gearbox. On this one, I'm going to try to modify this in some manner so that it can be, well, running around actually, so that can be fitted onto there like that. Okay, so I'll just quickly bolt that on. 3 bolts, no bracketry or anything like that. I can go under there, bolt under there dead quick, and then give it a quick test. Okay, so I've bolted it on. You can see it just clears dead nicely underneath as well. I'm not sure the back's there, I didn't check that, but yeah, doesn't hit anything at all. So that's fine. Give it the test. Okay, let's see if it sounds rubbish or is reasonable. Not that loud actually. Oh well. It's fairly quiet, to be fair. Much of a muchness.